What's up, Teo? Gosh, today. I'll probably start soon. I'm gonna chill for a second. This was an attempt. This was an attempt at live streaming Wednesday morning. It didn't work out so well. So I'm gonna kind of set some things up, and then we will get a rolling. I think I have the chat reply still on, but I wanted to link Sam's video for you guys in case you have not seen it, and Paul's. So let me get those. So we'll start soon. Sorry about the delay. I appreciate you being here, man. I appreciate you being here. The Trinity, will the Trinity get taken down? That's going to be the real question. Can you take down the Trinity? Does it emerge? Because it's not a human invention. Okay, we'll do Paul's video also. Get you guys. I'm gonna try to weave. Some videos. Paul did a fun one on trolls that got me thinking about some of my own recent experiences, and I think this will frame it. Actually, I'm probably not really ready to start, but I'll just go into it. So that's Paul on the trolls, Sam, and his message to the Jews, as he says, and then I want to follow up with Jacob Federecci's, at least he's got Keith scheduled to come on, so I kind of want to follow up with Jacob's video, Baptists Destroyed with Facts and Logic. That will tie into Paul's clip here about facts and logic, though Paul is talking about T-Grog. I will try to weave. We're going to try to weave, so I hope you guys are doing well. Always takes a second for my voice to kind of find itself, so excuse me as I feel raspy and self-conscious. I thought Sam's video was really good. I really liked Sam's video. Of course, Sam Tiedemann, Transfigured. Sam is a Unitarian, and I believe in the Trinity. So Sam and I are going to disagree on things, but Sam is a very nice person, and I thought that this video was very nice, and it provoked a few things in me that I wanted to share with you all, because some of the Bible passages that Sam points to, some of the Bible passages that Sam points to are fascinating in the context of the person of Jesus and just how Jewish was he. Now, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know that I do. I sort of take issue with people just saying Jesus is a Jew and not really explaining what they mean by that. In fact, I should probably just post this. Though, like Sam, you feel the need to preface anything like this with, I'm not anti-Semitic, which is a clue that the conditions are not quite right yet for maybe the meaningful discussion that people would hope to get. And so when you have someone like Sam, who's a very nice person, who could not be mistaken for being anti-Semitic, he feels the need to begin his message to the Jews with, my friends are Jewish, guys. I'm an ally. I'm a friend here. I'm a friend. So don't accuse me of being anti-Semitic. And that's an unfortunate condition of our sort of modern discourse, that you would fear being mislabeled. And I mean, I feel that as a Christian person, and as a person who, again, online, I'm pushing people to clarify what they mean when they say Jesus is a Jew. what are you getting at there? What do you mean by that? And that can get me mislabeled as though I am somehow against a certain group of people that I'm not against. In fact, I would say that I think, at least right now, I feel like I would support a. I, I think that God's promise to Abraham is very important. And the land and occupying the land seems to be an important part of that. And so I would advocate for that, but I would also advocate it in God's time and God's way, not through human machinations. And so it's a complex conversation, but you hear that, right? So I think he does a good job. I think it's okay to start where he's starting. And right here, I think he puts, and I don't know if the levels are good. I wasn't paying attention. I should have. You guys probably did not hear any of that. Huh. Weird. Sorry about that. My we'll get it squared away. We'll get it squared away here.
Used to say whatever you want. But it's also kind of true in my case. So I would first like to say some of my best friends are Jewish. Now, I'm of course saying that as a little bit tongue in cheek. That phrase, some of my best friends are Jewish, is sort of one of those cliches of people who try and make themselves look less racist than they are, or something like that, or as if that's an excuse to say whatever you want. But it's also kind of true in my case.
Yeah. This may not a great look after the whole Judean debacle. Well, I don't know what you mean by Judean debacle. People are Judean, and the New Testament uses the word Judios or Judeon, and you can translate that Jew or Judean. So if you want to clarify what the debacle is, I thought Sam was good. I thought this was good because, yes, you're going to say, but I have friends that are Jewish, and so therefore I'm not racist, or now I can be critical of Jewish people or the nation of Israel, let's say. And again, what does this tell us about the climate that we're in, that even as a Christian person in my own community, it seems like, man, you really can't be too critical of Israel. You really can't. And yet, look at the history of Israel. Like how faithful have the people been? See, this is going to be a problem. My dog's barking. Hold on. I don't know if I just yelled in the microphone or not, but my kids are not taking care of the dog. And so it's like, wow, it seems like God is working through people who are disobedient to him. And I say this as a Christian person. That's us. We are disobedient. Our depravity is total, right? No one is righteous, not one. And yet God chooses to work through a people who will perpetually disobey him. And yet you can't say that. You can't say essentially what the Bible is saying, which is no one's really living in obedience to God. And if that sounds too critical, and if people want to label someone as anti-Semitic because they can have an honest critique of the history of how God works in and through people, I just don't know. I don't like. We have to be able to have open and honest conversation without feeling like someone is going to mislabel you as anti-Semitic because you may not agree with them and you may not use the same words. Now, that's kind of where I go with Paul Vanderklay and the trolls. There seems to be, again, particularly with a group of people who simply say Jesus is a Jew and don't ask any questions, it's weird. It's like, why don't you want to clarify this? I guess I can post this. And there's a way in which, let me try to reframe this, because I actually think the nature of play is a good one, because like I was saying, the conditions are not right for good, open, and honest dialogue if someone like Sam Tiedemann, who is a very nice person, is afraid of being mislabeled as anti-Semitic. I don't know if he is, but it was interesting that that's where he started his video. And it seemed to indicate like, hey, just so you guys know, I'm not an enemy here. I'm an ally. I'm a friend. Don't get mad at me, because Sam, he wants to share what he believes and doesn't want to be mislabeled. And yet it seems like conditions are just not right. Now, play. Can we play? What are the rules of the game? And it seems like one of the rules of the game that some people want to play is you must just call Jesus a Jew and don't ask questions. And that was the problem that I had with the apostate prophet. He does not want to clarify what he means, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay, I will be right back. So play should become the frame in which we engage with this conversation. And I think once we get there, and I need to get through some of Sam's Bible passages, and I'm really sorry, today is a crazy day to try to do this. I got dogs barking, I got kids fighting, but I really wanted to sit down and do this live stream. And I hope that despite my distractions, that it can be, I can give this conversation the attention that it deserves. If you are willing to play, you have to be willing to be ridiculous in order to play. But it seems like some people are inviting you to a game of dodgeball, right? This was Paul and T-Grog, right? This was the idea of like, I think that Paul was getting at. And you've probably interacted with people like this on the playground if you grew up playing on the playground. There are people, let me see if I can pause it at play. No, we'll get there. Oh, we can get there. We're playing. There, play. Okay, hold on. Okay, I think I'm back. Yeah, and RJ, I see you. I'll get to your comments here in a second. But again, like I said, I want to kind of see if I can frame this properly. And of course, people are attached to their ideas because they're theirs, right? And I think one of the things that we have to be cognizant of is how closely we hold our ideas to our identity. And you have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to be wrong. And of course, here I am working out my theology on the internet to be despised by all. But what you can't do is this. And this is what I heard Paul talking with T-Grog. This is talking about T-Grog. This is what the sense that I get from some people is that some people invite you into a game of dodgeball only to change the rules so that there is only one possible outcome. And that outcome is you lose, I win. And you've been on the playground trying to play with, this was my morning, right? My morning was essentially talking to my 6-year-old about how she plays with her 9-year-old brother and her 11-year-old brother. And the way she wants to play is this. Guys, let's play the game. Okay, what's the game? The game's dodgeball. Okay, we all kind of agree generally what the game of dodgeball means. We all have like a set of rules that we operate off of. And then as the game starts to play, the rules suddenly change. Oh, there's a rule that we didn't realize. What is the rule? Okay, you're out. I got you. Well, I hit, no headshots. The ball hit me in the head. And there's no headshots. Okay. And then you hit the kid in the chest, and it's like, there's no chest shots either. So the rules start to change once the game is engaged with. And the only and it becomes clear that the kid organizing the game and who's inviting you into this game of dodgeball doesn't really want to play dodgeball. He just wants to win, and he just wants you to lose. And that is unfortunately what I see going on in the internet space. And if we're going to talk about the person of Jesus and just his connection to first century Judaism, his connection to Israel, I think that's a fascinating conversation. But like Sam Tiedemann, you feel, oh, but if I engage with that conversation, and if I'm too open and I'm too honest, then I will be mislabeled as someone who's anti-Semitic. And I don't want to. I want to play dodgeball. I want to play the game of dodgeball. And we need interlocutors who are willing to play that game well. And so let's listen to Paul's clip. I think I got the audio figured out. And you'll get a sense of maybe where we're going.
About it. I don't know that facts and logic are going to change it. And that doesn't mean, again, that there's not many things in this world that we can't do. And it doesn't mean, if I believe that arguments made no difference at all, I wouldn't have thousands of videos of making arguments and talking to you. But I think that it's much more. So here, the cognitive scientist with a PhD who has the high status job at University of Toronto, who's got 100,000 plus YouTube subs and has written many books and many articles. And again, T. Rogan won't want to believe him at all because John Vervaeke is not saying what T. Grog wants to hear. Again, another performative contradiction, but about it, I don't know that facts and logic are going to change it.
Okay. I don't know that facts and logic are going to change it. And when the facts and logic get presented,
T. Grog wants to hear.
It's not what T. Grog wants to hear. Right? John Vervaeke, cognitive scientist, PhD.
What T. Grog wants to hear.
Sorry. We'll get there. We'll
all because John Vervaeke is not saying what T. Grog wants to hear.
Yeah, John Vervaeke is not saying what T. Grog wants to hear. And so when you ask for facts and logic, and then facts and logic are presented to you, again, we've changed the rules of the game of dodgeball. No, those aren't the facts and the logic that I was asking for. Hold on a second. Good grief. And maybe RJ, again, hopefully I'm not misunderstanding your point here, but maybe that's a little bit of the same thing. Pete, skip to the point because this is not what I want to hear, I guess. This is a lot on Semitism right now and not on the same point or your disagreement. And again, it's just not clear enough for me to understand what you're saying. The issue isn't being opposed, it's being discrete hatred. Okay, what do you mean by that? If I disagree with people, do you mean that is discrete hatred? As a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, I don't hate people. But I can disagree with them. And I can say that people are living in disobedience. I myself am living in disobedience. I'm not a perfect person. That's part of why I need Jesus, right? So I don't get it. Pete, you've put a strange amount of emphasis on things like this. Same points. Okay. So RJ, I just need you to be a little bit more clear when you I would love to engage with your ideas. I would love to engage with your thoughts, but I need you to be a little bit more clear. What do you mean? Points like this. Points like this. Points about who Jesus is and his identity. Points about the New Testament and the words that the New Testament authors are using. What point? Yes, I put emphasis on understanding the person of Jesus. And right now there is a weird not emphasis. There's something weird that's happening online, which is you just have to agree with this group of people that is saying Jesus is, right? Jesus is, and then you fill in the blank. Jesus is what? Anytime you say Jesus is something, I'm asking people to be clear about what that is. And I don't fully have this worked out, but it just seems like it's like the virtue signaling, right? It's the dog whistle of you're on my team if you say these phrases. It's babble. And I know I've pointed this out before, but in Babel, they have to use the same words. It's not just that they spoke with the same language. It's that they were using the same words. And so anybody who challenges the words, right? So when I say, would Jesus was a Judean, is that what you mean? And people say, no, it's just Jesus is a Jew, and we're going to leave it vague on purpose. Why? Because you're not really trying to communicate something specific and true about the person of Jesus. You're trying to get Christians to believe a certain ideology. I think that must be. I mean, nobody's explained it any better than that. Like, why not have the conversation? Why not go back to the New Testament and say, what are the New Testament authors saying? And so it's just interesting. It's just interesting that there's these rules that you have to play by, and somebody who starts to challenge those rules, what happens on the playground? Well, to Paul's point, T-Grog is throwing basketballs on the hockey field. And so what do? They take the basketballs, they throw them back at T-Grog, and T-Grog gets upset. T-Grog got upset because people didn't play the game according to my rules. Again, my 6-year-old, that's been our morning. That's been the morning that we've had, is like, brothers don't want to play by my rules, the rules of my game. And I'll just be honest. I don't think Jesus plays by our rules. I just don't. I think Jesus is going to constantly challenge us on our view of who he is. And he does that all throughout the Gospels. And so particularly today, particularly right now, and let me know it looks like my audio is kind of clipping, so let me know if this is too loud. Sometimes I get too close to my mic, so. Okay, so which PowerPoint slide from Sam's talk do I disagree with? I don't know that I disagree with. Well, let's get into Sam, because like I said, I think Sam's video was very good. I think Sam, again, even as a Unitarian, and I'm it's funny. Let's see. Again, If you want to play this game, you have to be foolish. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. And as a Trinitarian monotheist, I feel like my theology is very strange. It's really weird to be like, God is one in being and three in person. But what often is misunderstood is that somehow Trinitarians are not monotheists. Okay, so of course Sam is a Unitarian, right? This God is one. And we would certainly agree, and Jesus would agree, God is one. And so even though I like Sam and I think his video is great, and I think you all should watch it, there are going to be points where I disagree. Here's a fascinating one. The Canaanite woman. What is meant by this? This will get into more of Jesus's ministry. It's very interesting. I think the backdrop of this has to be understood with the divided kingdom. Judah in the south, Israel in the north. And I think if we understand that divided kingdom, we'll understand this passage a little bit better. But let's listen.
And his disciples came and begged him, saying, "Send her away, for she is crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." And he answered, "It is not right to take the children's bread and to throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire."
O woman, great is your faith. So, what house is she a part of? What tribe is she a part of? So again, I mean, yeah, I think Sam and I are probably going to read this passage differently if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for where we would differ. It's important that she's a Canaanite woman. Because of course, God calls Israel into the land of Canaan. He calls them to be a unique nation of people, unique from the pagan nations that were there. And yet here we have one of those very women. She's a Canaanite. But she comes to Jesus. She cries out. And I think this is really important. We miss this. The crowd often refers to Jesus as a Nazarene. But you hear from these other people, like the blind man Bartimaeus, hear this Canaanite woman. She calls him Lord. She calls him Son of David. She doesn't see Jesus as just a Nazarene. She doesn't see Jesus as just a Galilean. She doesn't see Jesus as just a Judean even. But as the Lord, as the Son of David. And that's part of my project, is to get people to see Jesus for who he really is. Expand the view there. But he did not answer her a word. His disciples came and implored him, saying, "Send her away, because she keeps shouting." But he answered and said, "I was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Notice he's not talking. He doesn't say, "Lost sheep of the house of Judah." Lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, is this in reference to the United Kingdom? I think it probably is, but you will also miss something if you don't realize that Judah and Israel, as two kingdoms, were separated from each other. And she begs, she bows down before him, saying, "Lord, help me." And he says this, "It's not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." Wow. Again, Jesus is going to challenge our view of who he is. Is he calling her a dog? Or is he describing the house of Israel? And how does God view the house of Israel? How does Jesus view the house of Israel? Well, there's a table, there's bread, there's children, and there are dogs. And do we throw the crumbs to the dogs? She said, yes, Lord, even the dogs feed on the crumbs which fall from their master's table. This Canaanite woman is willing to assume the role of a dog if it means that she can draw near to the master's table. That is the faith of this Canaanite woman. Jesus will later say, don't say that you have Abraham as your father, for out of the stones of the ground God can raise up children of Abraham. So who are the children seated at this table? I think this Canaanite woman actually shows us that she is one of the children seated at the table because of her humility. She's willing to even say, yes, I will, if it means I can be in the house, if it means I can come up to the table of my master, I will come up even as lowly as a dog, as a low, humble person. It's interesting. You can also look at this passage and look at the interplay between sheep and dogs. I don't know, there might be something there, maybe more to that. But I think the point of the passage here is not that Jesus is saying, oh, this table belongs to the Jews or to Judah. And we can't really take the crumbs off of this table and give it to people who are not of the house of Judah. That's not what this passage is saying at all. Judah is not mentioned. Israel is mentioned. And I do think it's the united Israel. I think it's God's view of Israel, not a human view of Israel, not an earthly view of Israel. And in that house, you approach the table with humility. And what does Jesus say? Your faith is great. Ah, who else had great faith? Who else has great faith? Doesn't Abraham have great faith? And isn't that the blessing that Abraham will give to the nations, even maybe this Canaanite woman? That Israel is a light to the Gentiles and is never meant to be insulary, but always missional, always global, a light to the Gentiles. God is saying, you will be my particular people, and I'm going to raise you up, to be a light. And so I think there's a bigger plan going on. And even this Canaanite woman has great faith. And I don't know, you could disagree with that interpretation. Is her faith great like Abraham's faith? Is that what Jesus is saying? Maybe. I think it's clear that she is sitting at the table. And so this is not a passage about how one tribe of people is greater than the other, but that the kingdom of heaven, the house of Israel, is a house where you get to eat of that table because of your faith and your humility. Something like that. All right. We'll keep going with Sam. I thought this is a good reference. Maybe I'll try to catch up on chat. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for hanging out. Again, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of getting a few things out there, and I'll catch up if my kids allow me to.
Rated, but didn't the Christians get their conception of God from Judaism? Did not Jesus affirm the unity of God when he recited the Shema? It's very strange. So again, this idea from the Trinitarian conception of God that the Jewish conception of God is inferior or insufficient, and that the Trinitarian conception is superior because it's halfway to paganism. Traded, but didn't the Christians?
I kind of like that, halfway to paganism. I know that that's not probably what people don't want that, but again, Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom. The Northern Kingdom goes into the nations. God will eventually gather the Northern Kingdom. We'll get to this. Because I think Ezekiel, we'll get to this when Sam talks about Romans 11. But right there, I just will say that, there would be confusion if the assumption is, and maybe you guys can help flesh this out a little bit more, but the confusion is there because Christians did not get their concept of God from the Jewish concept. I think as a Christian, I would go further back. And of course, I would say that, what is God doing with Moses on Sinai? Is God giving the Hebrew people Judaism? I would say no. He's giving them something, and the Jews point to that as being their own, and they would steward it, and we can get that. That's Romans 3. They were entrusted with the oracles of God. And so that is a great, you've been entrusted with a great thing there. But God is doing something bigger than just Judah, just Judaism, just one, it's bigger than one tribe. It always has been, even with Abraham, even with his family. It's like, I'm going to take this family, and what am I going to do with this family? I'm going to make them a blessing to the nations. It's always bigger than the one family, right? And so I would say as a Christian, my theology comes from similar texts, right? we would go into the Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament. We don't call it the Old Testament to be disparaging. We believe that the old is, like Jesus said, the old wine needs to be preserved, and there's new wine, and you don't put the fresh wine into an old wineskin, because then you destroy the old wineskin. And Christians are not. Our intent is not to destroy the old wineskin. That is not what it is. Matthew 15, for the sake of your traditions, you have made void the word of God. So again, entrusted with the oracles of God, says Romans 3. But what has happened, for the sake of your tradition, you have forsaken that charge that you were responsible with. And we all have done this. I do this. That's why I need a savior. You hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy when he said, sorry, that is tiny. When he said, these people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. So teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. We would say, no, I do not get my theology from the commandments of men. That's why Trinitarian monotheism is so strange, right? We believe that it's been revealed to us from outside of us. It's not an invention of humanity. It's not something humans invented. Humans want to invent an idea of God that is manageable, who is small, who is safe, who we can understand. And Trinitarian monotheism is hard to understand, which is one of the reasons why I think it came from God. It's like, no, it doesn't seem like humans have this tendency to like really lean into something that's very foreign and strange and hard to grapple with. It's like we want things to be sanitary and manageable. So we'll keep going. I'm sorry. I will. What's up, Anselman? Good to see you. Ethan, Neutrino, good to see you guys. And I'm sorry again, I am kind of focusing just on this. I'll try to get through it before I get interrupted by another dog barking or another child screaming. We'll be fine. We'll get through it.
Again, you still have this very Judeo-centric view in Paul that it is Judaism, which is this sort of cultivated olive tree, and all these Gentiles are wild, uncultivated, uncivilized olive trees, but they're being grafted in.
Okay. Is it a Judeo-centric? Is Romans 11 Judeo-centric? But let me put an idea in your mind. Or is it talking about Israel? Not Judah, but Israel.
Again, you still have this very Judeo-centric view in Paul that it is Judaism, which is this sort of cultivated olive tree, and all these Gentiles are wild, uncultivated, uncivilized olive trees, but they're being grafted in.
But it's the branch. So listen to that. It's not the tree, it's the branch.
Tree, and all these have cultivated olive tree.
That in some way, Judaism or Judah is the cultivated olive tree, but that's not what Romans 11 says. It's not Judah. It's not Judaism. He frames it this way. He says, I'm an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin. Okay, so Paul, even though Judah would have been considered part of the southern Benjamin would have been considered part of the southern kingdom of Judah. Benjamin sort of aligns with Judah. He points to Israel and Benjamin, not Judah. Okay. I say then, they did not stumble as to fall, did they may never be. Okay, let me see if I got this right. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm tracking with Sam and I'm tracking with my own thinking on this. Because I think there's something fascinating here. But I'm missing the passage. I'm actually overlooking. There it is. Branch is broken off. Okay. And I'm sorry. Sometimes it's just like I don't know if I'm dyslexic or something, but I'm just like scrolling through this and I'm looking right at the words and I'm overlooking them. Okay. So what happens with Israel? What happened? What's going on? Okay. God has not rejected his people who he foreknew. Or do you not know what scripture says in the passage about Elijah, how he pleads with God against Israel, like nobody believes anymore. And the Lord, they have killed your prophets, they have torn down your altars, and I alone am left, and they are seeking my life. But what is the divine response to him? I've kept for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. So there are faithful people in Israel. In the same way, then, there's also come to be, at this present time, a remnant according to God's gracious choice. But if by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, the grace is no longer grace. What then? What is Israel seeking? What Israel is seeking, it is not obtained. But those who were chosen have obtained it, and the rest were hardened. Just as it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes that do not see, ears that do not hear. And David says, let their table become a snare and a trap and a stumbling block and a retribution for them. Let their eyes be darkened to see not and bend their backs forever. I say then, did they not stumble as to fall, did they? May it never be. But by their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make them jealous. Now, if the transgression is riches to the world, again, light to the world. God is using actually the disobedience of Israel as the light. It's meant to be, right, that our harmony and our the obedience that is a light to the Gentiles, and yet God is saying, I'll even use the disobedience to be a light. Their failure is riches for the Gentiles. How much more will the fulfillment be? But I'm speaking to you who are Gentiles, inasmuch as I'm an apostle to the Gentiles. I magnify my ministry. If somehow I might move to jealousy my fellow countrymen and save some of them. For if their rejection is reconciliation of the world, what would their acceptance be but a life from the dead? The piece of the dough is holy, the lump also is holy. If the root is holy, okay, now we're getting somewhere. The branches are too, okay? So if the root is holy, the branches are too. What is the root? The root, help me out here. What do you guys think about this? The root is obedient Israel. And what I mean by that is Jesus. in some ways. Obedient Israel, the true Son of God, who lives in obedience to God, who does what the people of God are always meant to do, to be a light to the Gentiles. The true Son is the root that is holy, and from him the branches are too. But if some of the branches are broken off, now listen to this. Now again, Ezekiel will play in the backdrop of this. Broken off branches. I'll do blue. Hopefully you guys can see this. Maybe I should make it slightly bigger. That might help me read too. Probably not. That's too big. See, I need one in between. And you, being a wild olive, were grafted in among them and became partakers with them of the rich root of the olive tree. Okay. So a wild olive branch. Do not be arrogant towards the branches, but if you are arrogant, remember that it is not you who supports the root, but the root that supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. Quite right. They were broken off for their unbelief. So there are some who are unfaithful. They were broken off, which makes space for this Gentile branch. But you stand by your faith. Do not be conceited, but fear. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. Behold then the kindness and the severity of God to those who fell, severity, but to you God's kindness, if you continue in his kindness. Otherwise you also will be cut off. And they also, if they do not continue in their unbelief, they'll be grafted back in, for God is able to graft them back in again. If you were cut off for what is by nature a wild olive tree and were grafted in contrary to the nature of the cultivated olive tree, how much more will these who are the natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree? For I don't want you, brethren, to be uninformed of this mystery, so that you will not be wise in your own estimation. Again, doctrines of men, that a partial hardening has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved, just as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion, and he will remove the ungodliness from Jacob. This is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. Okay. Again, thanks for hanging in there with me. There is a backdrop to this that I think is fascinating. We have two branches, right? And it's not, again, Paul in Romans 11 is talking about obedient Israel and disobedient Israel. Disobedient Israel is broken off. And so this branch gets broken off. And yet there's this wild olive branch that's ready to be grafted in. And so there's two branches in the hand of God or in the hand of someone. Again, I think Jesus is the obedient son. He is, in that way, he is what Israel is supposed to be. Ezekiel 37 gives us some fascinating context for this conversation if I think we're willing to have it. Again, you have to play a little bit, and I'm not even sure I fully grasp all of this. The word of the Lord came again, saying to you, Son of man, take for yourself one stick. Notice, one stick. What is a branch? It's kind of like a stick, isn't it? And write on it, for Judah. Ah, a branch of Judah. For the sons of Israel. So again, Judah, but also Israel. And his companions. Interesting. I hadn't really thought about this passage, this part of the passage. So for the nation of Judah, or for the tribe of Judah, for the sons of Israel, and for their companions. Then take another stick and write on it, for Joseph. The stick of Ephraim, that's the northern kingdom, and the house of Israel, his companions. So again, what is the Israel of God? Sorry, I should have done another stick. There it is. Take another stick. So one stick and another stick. One stick for Judah and one stick for Joseph, or Ephraim, the northern kingdom. So again, Judah, southern kingdom, Ephraim, northern kingdom. And join them for yourself to one another into one stick, that they may become one in your hand. That's what Paul is saying. They will be grafted back in. Will be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. Then join them for yourselves into one stick. They may become one in your hand. When the sons of your people speak to you, saying, will you not declare to us what you mean by this? Say to them, thus says the Lord, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribe of Israel, his companions, and I will put them with it, with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they will be one in my hand. I preached on the 12 gates in the book of Revelation, and if you map on the gates to the way Israel would have encamped around the tabernacle, the gate of Joseph and the gate of Judah face each other. It's this beautiful image of reconciliation between the northern and southern kingdoms, between the two brothers, Judah, the brother who betrays, and Joseph, the brother who has been betrayed, and they're reconciled. That's what we need to get to. That's the hope that I have, right? That we would be eating at the table, right? Remember the Canaanite woman who's willing to be a dog if it just means that she can be at the table of the master. Well, these two brothers sit at the table and they face each other because there's reconciliation between them, even though there is a betrayal in their past. So Judah and Joseph, the stick in which you write will be your hand before your eyes. Say to them, thus saith the Lord, behold, I will take the sons of Israel from among the nations, the Canaanite woman from among the nations where they have gone. They were essentially absorbed, right, by Assyria. And I will gather them from every side and bring them into their own land. I will make them one nation in the land. I will, not the machinations of human, earthly political systems, I would say. Now, does God use those? He certainly does. And I will make them one nation in the land, one mountain, on the mountains of Israel. And one king will be king for all of them. And they will no longer be two nations, and they will no longer be divided into two kingdoms. I think that's what God is doing. I think that's what Paul is. I don't know. I don't know if that's totally the backdrop in Paul's mind, but it's certainly there. The Bible, as much as it's, within my canon, is 66 different books. It is still one book. The main author is God, and then the 40 different human authors that wrote under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And so I don't know if that's in the backdrop of Paul's mind, Ezekiel 37, but it seems like Ezekiel 37 allows us to understand Romans 11. So I hope you hung in there with me on that one, because that's to me, very interesting. That's an interesting piece to this puzzle. And I think it would be worth more conversation. Romans 11 is about one branch that has been cut off of a natural olive tree and another branch that has been cut off of a wild olive tree. The two branches, one for Judah, the other free from the nations and Gentiles, attached to one unified trunk. Sam doesn't think that. Sam would say, I disagree. I think Paul is clear that the Jews are the natural part of the tree and the root, and the Gentiles are not. That's where I would disagree with Sam. It's clear that he's not even talking about, well, unless by the Jews you mean Israel, and then we could sort of I don't know, discuss that a little bit more. I think that people unfairly bring those two together. The Bible seems like it is there is some distinction to be made between Judah, Israel, Northern Kingdom, all that we just went through. So, and right on cue, my dog is barking once again. So let me see. Oh, man. Yeah, my family has been grafted into the family of God, which is and always has been Israel. And Judah is a part of that. So again, we need to not overlook that piece of the puzzle. Like, again, it's Romans 3. You were entrusted with the oracles of God. Unfortunately, as you read the New Testament, as you read Jesus, the words of Jesus, it seems like some people have failed in their charge. They are not representing the message well. Okay, hold on. All right, it's been a fun Wednesday. Sorry, guys. If you were born to Christian parents, you are... Well, see, I don't know. St. Paul tells us clearly that the church is the Israel of God. Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I would agree with Anselman. And yet, the church, what is the church? Again, are we saying this is an in-group and we're casting everyone out? No, the church has this ability. See, that's the thing, light to the Gentiles, right? If you are not being a light to the Gentiles, you are not Israel. Sorry. That's how God describes it, right? And so if you're insulary and you are rejecting people based off of the fact that they have the soul of a Gentile, which is qualitatively different than a Jewish soul, a la Jacob Federecci, then I think you're not being the Israel of God. You're not being faithful to what God had for Israel. I mentioned this. I hope that Jacob and Keith's conversation can be a good one. I don't know. I don't know how hopeful I am about that. Because it does seem like, unfortunately, again, Paul was saying that Tigrog wants facts and logic, and yet when the facts and logic are presented, Tigrog goes, no, not those facts and logic. Jacob destroys Baptists with facts and logic. He says that Protestant theology is so bad because Protestant theology is done, by themselves and without a community, and that's honestly bearing false witness. Jacob knows that that's not where Protestant theology comes from. He knows that that's not how Protestant theology is done, but he willfully misrepresents Protestant theology, and so as he talks to Keith, I hope he would be, I think Jacob will be hospitable to Keith if they do this live stream. But behind the scenes, Jacob says he, part of what he does is bully Christians. again, that doesn't seem to me what God's intent is for Israel. It's not to bully Christians. And if the game that you're playing doesn't allow for the other to come in, and it doesn't allow for hospitality for someone who's other, who maybe wants to learn the game. And part of the way you learn the game is to stop changing the rules of the game, right? To put them in your favor. But I just thought it was funny. Like, again, T-Grog, Facts and Logic, Jacob, Facts and Logic. Jacob says that, Keith and Matthew Everhard don't know what they're talking about because there's more baths. There are more baths in Jerusalem, in and around Jerusalem. So that's the fact, right? So I don't know how Keith and Matthew Everhard are going to survive that. I think Protestant theology must be done at that point, right? Because there's just more baths. We didn't realize how many baths there were. So, and I don't find baptism to be a conversation worth debating, but, again, present to me facts and logic. Okay, no, not those facts and logic. Here's my facts and logic. My facts and logic are you're wrong and I'm right. That's the game. And if you play by different rules, then, I'm going to take my ball and go home, I guess. And so we have to get past that. And I think we do have to play. There has to be a spirit of play that trusts in what God is doing. And it does seem like what God is doing is wonderful and fascinating and mysterious. And Ezekiel 37 being the backdrop of Romans 11 seems pretty fascinating to me. 2 sticks, the natural branch has been cut off. The wild olive branch is ready to be grafted in. And what is he doing with those 2 sticks? He's making them 1 stick. And if we can get to that point, if we can sort of get past this, if we can get past some of the, not these facts and logic, those other facts and logic that I wanted to talk about, I think Paul is onto that. I think Paul is onto something there with some of his comments about T-Grog and how people play in this space. If you throw a basketball onto a hockey rink while people are playing hockey, you may get the basketball thrown back at your face, and that's okay. You just have to be willing to understand that. All right, I'm going to try to catch up on some chat. You guys have been really patient with me today. Thank you for being here. Yeah, RJ, again, man, I appreciate you being here. I don't know what snipping and drama. What is snipping and drama about that? I thought the Ezekiel passage was fascinating. I thought bringing Ezekiel 37 into Romans 11. I mean, come on, man. That's fun. RJ, I think the point is there real tension that comes from Christianity springing out of Judaism, and humans are still tense after 2,000 years. I think you're right. And I think, again, and maybe Ethan, let me know what you think about this. Maybe part of the tension is that Christians keep persisting that Christianity came out of Judaism when Jesus is clearly doing something very different. And I've asked this before, I'll just continue to ask this. Would a first century Jewish religious leader look at what Jesus is doing and say, yes, he is one of us? It seems like clearly they said, no, he's not one of us. He touches lepers. He raises the dead. He said something greater than the temple was here. So I think Christianity needs to re-understand and reevaluate its connection to Judaism. Jesus certainly interacts within a first century Jewish religious structure, but I think he's pointing us to something that goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, where Adam was entrusted with a message, don't eat of that fruit. And yet he mismanages the message. We need a new Adam. And we follow the true Adam, who is the true Israel, who is the true Son of God, who rightly handles the oracles of God, rightly handles the message of God, right? What does Jesus say? He says, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses, so listen to what they say, listen to their words. The words are good, but don't do what they do, because their deeds, they do not practice what they preach. He is the one saying, no, come back to the word of God. And so again, Ethan, let me know what you think about that. Like, I think maybe we need to rethink the connection there. I think that there's a trunk of this tree and it's branching out, and some of those branches look different. And I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why someone like Cale Zeldin can come onto my channel. You know, I can talk with Cale. Cale is a Catholic. I'm a Protestant. Is that what we're talking about when we talk about branches? You know, is it maybe not a bad thing that sometimes churches do split off into different denominations, as long as those denominations can work together? This Good Friday, 2 churches in my town are going to come together and host a Good Friday service. One is a Presbyterian church, the other is a Baptist church, right? And here you see Keith Foskey, who's a Baptist, and Matthew Everhard, who's a Presbyterian. Now, of course, they're debating baptism, which again I find to be maybe not worth all the time and effort. And they're able to sit down, right? And so we're gonna do a Good Friday service together, Baptists and Presbyterians. That's not a bad thing, you know. Yeah. So anyway, hey, thanks, Ethan. My response is Christians don't practice what they preach either. That's being human. You're right. Now here's the thing though. What Christians preach is total depravity. We preach that you cannot get it all done. Like you're not going to be faithful to the law of Moses. And that was one of the, I guess maybe I could post this. But somebody was saying Jesus is a Jew in the sense that he follows the law of Moses. And I said, okay, well, if Jesus is, if following the law of Moses is what makes you a Jew, then I think that it's possible Jesus is the only one then, because no one follows the law faithfully, right? We've all fallen short. We've all gone away, just like Ezekiel, like that passage in Isaiah we were reading. Denominations are absolutely branches, and every single one has Judaism as its root. See, I think I would point to something different. Again, and what is Jesus saying when he says, you have taken you teach as doctrine the words of man? Did we look at that? Where? Gosh, I've lost all my Bible passages now. Yeah. Well, and RJ, here's what I'll try to be clear. Again, you know, it's funny. It's like, oh, can we have this conversation without being called anti-Semitic? I guess not. Being anti-Jew about things is rather fruitless too. Nobody here is anti-Jew. No one here is anti-Jew. Now, do I disagree with Judaism? Yeah, I mean, I'm not a follower of Judaism. So I will disagree with that as a religion, certainly. But nobody is anti-Jew. And I think Judah as a tribe, Judah as a, again, this goes back to, you know, I'm trying to understand the first century Jewish religious context that Jesus entered into. And the New Testament authors use a word that can be translated Judean or Jew. And I think sometimes Judean is a better translation. So I will point to Judean as a way of trying to help clarify what we're talking about, because I do feel like the word Jew can be used in so many different ways that it can be too vague to be helpful in this conversation. So, but anyway, in any context, no one here is anti-Jew. I think Judah has a particular place and a particular role, just like Romans 3 says. I was there a second ago. What does Paul say? They were entrusted with the oracles of God. That's the word. I'm assuming it's Judios, right? So that's this word, and that I've talked about before on stream. Has you know, something, I don't know, it has a semantic range, let's just say that. Okay. Yeah, it's a particular error. This interesting error, a certain kind of Protestantism to say that you must inevitably sin. The Lord said, go and sin no more. And his apostles say repeatedly, sin not. You can do it in Christ. Yeah. See, I think that's the point there. I think Anselm puts the sort of period at the end of the sentence there. In Christ, you can sin more. RJ, this is Logos Bible software. So, hey, Logos, if you want to sponsor the channel, I'm constantly using Logos. I'm not using it to its fullest extent, but Logos is it's very powerful. It's very interesting. You can look at where and look, and I would encourage you guys to do your own research. Look at how the Bible, both the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament, use the word Jew and or its variations, right? Judios, Judaion, or Yahudi. Again, it seems at time, if you were to translate it Judean, it actually clarifies the passages way more. You know, even Jesus. I mean, Sam even pointed to this in his video. You know, the sign that was put over Jesus's cross says, you know, Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews. That's how it's often translated. But if you understand that that's the word Judios, the King, Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Judeans, it opens that passage far more because of the historical context and even the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, and the fact that he is the Lord, the son of David, right? That he would be this Nazarene, a king of the Judeans. Is fascinating. So anyway, that's Logos. Sorry, I sort of answered your question, and then I went off on a weird thing. Where was I? Oh, I went to translation. Lemma. It's really interesting to see. So this would be the New Testament, and where the New Testament uses the word, and the Septuagint. You look in the first real place. Like if you look at, it's Israel is a term that is used. Jew is honestly not. Esther, clearly, Hosea. Esther is one place you're going to find it a lot. And then in, right, the story. Anyway, it's just fascinating to look at. Yeah. All right. Hanselman, you're probably right, but Jesus wasn't modern Jew. I don't understand why modern Judaism matters to Christians. I kind of agree, Ethan. Biblical era Judaism is what interests me. Okay, so Ethan is saying something that I've tried to get this across, and yet even Father Stephen DeYoung, he pointed this out. Why do Christians go laterally into sort of modern Judaism to try to understand first century Christianity? He said it's a weird move, and I agree with that. But I think, Ethan, that part of it is why I push on the idea of Jesus as a Jew, because then modern Christians go, oh, so should I be Jewish? This is the Judaizing question that is answered in the New Testament. Do you need to become a Jew before you become a Christian? And what people, seemingly some people online, are trying to get you to think, well, in order to be a real Christian, you have to sort of move laterally into Judaism or something. You need to understand your Christianity through this lens. And it's really biblical area or first century Judaism that interests me. And it interests me because that is the context in which Jesus enters into human history. And he participates in the synagogue and the temple. And yet he clearly makes distinctions as well. And where he participates and where he makes distinctions are very important to me as a Christian, a person who follows Jesus and wants to understand what God is doing through history. And as a Presbyterian, I would look at covenant theology as being very important. But anyway, there's lots of conversation. I hope you guys have been doing well. I wish I could get to everybody's comments. Thank you guys for hanging in there. So Anselman and Ethan, you're kind of saying, Ethan, I see one of the things you typed. I don't think we're actually disagreeing. And I feel like that's a lot. I feel like there's a lot of places where there's agreement, if we can define our terms properly. Again, set the rules of the game. What version of the game of dodgeball are we playing? So we all know. And if you say, well, that's not the rule. That's not the rule I like. And actually, it's funny. I was noticing this, even in even in one of Sam's recent videos, was it this one? I was trying to catch up on this, and I'm sorry, I need to get back to YouTube Premium. You know, he's got Rabbi Singer on, and Paul pointed out that is Sam, what did he say? Gosh, Paul, too many. I got to find this. Anyway, is Sam questioning 94% of the Christian world? So that's something that Rabbi Singer said. And it's like, no, we're misframing. Yet again, we're misframing someone. And we need to agree. And once we can agree, I think that we can play this game a little bit better. And so I think, you know, one of the things, it's all about definition. Jesus is God of Israel become man. Yeah, Jesus was a Jewish reformer. I would kind of agree with that. I think that Jesus is interacting with the Judaism of his day and calling them to something greater. I think that is the invitation there. And I think, you know, again, you know, I've been called a trans Jew. I've been called a pig Jew. And I'm like, I'm not at all trying to be Jewish. I am trying to read about the person of Jesus. And I do think the Judaism of Jesus's day helps me understand that. But yeah, it's like, don't miscategorize people. Don't misframe people. Don't build straw men out of people or Christianity in general. If Jewish people want to engage with Christianity, engage with the actual Christianity that is there, not some straw man Christianity that you feel like you can manipulate and play with. Jesus died a Jew. Again, I'm going to ask you to clarify what you mean by that. Can we go back and identify your critique of Sam's video? I don't know that I'm critiquing Sam's video. I'm engaging with it, and I will critique some of the Bible passages. I mean, I didn't play huge clips from Sam's channel. If you wanted me to play more context, I'm sorry. I was just looking at the Bible passages that Sam uses to basically say, hey, as a Unitarian Christian, I am an ally and I am a friend. And what does he say here at the beginning? His thumbnail, I'm on the wrong video. What does his thumbnail say? An admirer, a Unitarian admirer. And you know, part of, let's say, I'm sorry, RJ, but like one of the things Sam was saying, he would indicate that maybe the table is the table for the Jews. And it's just not, like with the Canaanite woman. And I'm just saying, it's just not. It's clearly not. So I don't know if that helps you, but, you know, again, I'm not necessarily trying to debate Sam or critique Sam. I am interested in developing this conversation more. And I think that I see some obstacles, and some of the obstacles are vague definitions for things. And when you want things to remain in that vague place, you build a culture or an environment for misunderstanding. So I don't want to do that. And I want to see what's happening in Ezekiel 37 come to fruition. And I think Paul nods at it in Romans 11. But if we continue to say, you know, the Jews are the tree and the Gentiles are being grafted into the Jews or to Judaism, no, then we misunderstand what's going on. As Anselman said, you know, we're talking about Israel really, and I would say as a Christian that the church is Israel, or is something like that, because I believe Jesus is the true Son, and we as followers of Jesus then in some way we are in Christ, and being in Christ, we in some way represent what Israel was supposed to represent to the Gentiles, to the nations. Yeah, if you mean family of Abraham, here's my question. Why not use the word Hebrew? And maybe I don't understand the definitions well enough, but Abraham comes before Judah, and the word Jew comes from the word Judah. So when I hear people talking about Jew, it takes me back to Judah and the tribe of Judah and the southern kingdom of Judea, or the southern kingdom of Judah. And Abraham is something bigger. The family of Abraham would be Israel, or even something bigger than that, because Israel, it's interesting. Those, what does he say? He says that it'll be those who call upon my name, and Israel isn't even exactly that yet. You cannot separate Jew from Israel. That's not how definitions work. Well, okay, again, if by Jew you mean Israel, why not use the word Israel? That's what's confused. People want to use this word Jew to mean other things when there are other words to mean those things. Does that make sense? Yeah, Judah comes from the tribes come from Jacob comes from Abraham. The definitions are nested. I'm not saying they can't be, I'm not saying they're not nested. I see that. That's very clear. But I'm just saying they don't mean the same thing. Judah is not Israel, and therefore Jew is not Israel. Now, if a Jew is obedient to God and a light to the Gentiles, that I would think is you are Israel, right? That's Israel. It's not about, and again, it's about faith, right? The Canaanite woman, Abraham, it's about faith. What is your faith? Is your faith causing you to be a light to the Gentiles? And even then, maybe I'm using Gentiles to mean sort of pagan nations, but also just non-followers of Yahweh. The fleshly descendants of Abraham who hated Christ were told by Jesus that their father was not Abraham, but the devil. Yeah. Can you graft a maple to a pine? And if so, would it be a pineapple? A pineapple? Would it be a pineapple, Chad? Good to see you, man. Good to see you, brother. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I keep saying thank you for hanging in there. Again, I said at the beginning, I wanted to do this conversation. I wanted to pay the attention and service that it requires. And I feel like I didn't quite get there, and I'm sorry. And part of that is me trying to manage my own schedule and my own life. So is Christianity differentiated or not, Pete? I don't know what you mean. Differentiated from what? I think, I think there is a Christianity that we have not yet seen. There is some of the work of Christ is not yet finished. He will come again, right? I think that's part of the misconception is, the Messiah that many within the Jewish religious system of the first century anticipated was not the Messiah that they witnessed, right? They witnessed the Lamb who comes to lay down his life, the Lamb that takes away the sins of the world, the sacrificial Lamb when they wanted the lion. But in the book of Revelation, John, who is a Jewish man, the angel tells him, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And John looks and he sees a lamb, but he doesn't question the lamb. Gosh. No. It's got to be like, it's there at the beginning. Maybe it's Revelation 1. Is it 3? Anyway, it's there. Yeah. All right, kids. Well, I got to run. I wish I could catch up on all the chat. I do appreciate you guys. And thank you again for hanging in there. Sorry that the stream was delayed quite a bit. And thank you to my wife and to my kids for tolerating me as I try to live stream and podcast and engage with a very good, like I said, a very good video from Sam, and possibly a less interesting interaction with that video. And if you follow on X, there it is. It's all kind of there, at least me sort of talking to myself. Shout out to Paul Vanderklay and his video on trolls. And we will catch you guys in the next one. I'm just gonna hum to myself for a second. I don't have Scott's songs, so there you go. You get me humming.